Good afternoon to you. 306 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, we'll talk to our buddy Jorge Ventura. He's a journalist for News Nation, as Democrat mayors are now furious about the state of illegal immigration in their cities. Eric Adams just going on a tear yesterday in New York City. I've got the audio ahead for you. Sean Stevens joins us at 4:30 today from FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. And we're going to talk about the worst universities for free speech in the entire country. The rankings are out. Mark Green, the congressman, is here at 5 o'clock today. And then Roger Severino joins us at 5:30. We'll talk about a piece of legislation put forward by a Republican senator today to make it so that there are no more mask mandates ever. Ever. That story and so much more coming up. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
One of the things that's so interesting about Joe Biden is that he has these insecurities that govern a lot of the ways in which he moves through the world. And so one of his primary insecurities is that he doesn't want to be perceived as stupid, because he had this plagiarism scandal back in the 1980s. And so when he walks into an interview or he walks into a press conference, he wants to have mastery of what he's discussing. And so his prep sessions can go on for long periods of time.
Let me ask you this way. If at the end of this calendar year, Joe Biden announces that he's not going to seek a second term, based on all your reporting, how much of a surprise will that be to you?
I would say it would be a surprise to me, but it wouldn't be a total surprise.
Wouldn't be a total shock.
It wouldn't be a total shock. That was Meet the Press this past weekend. Chuck Todd and Franklin Foer, who just wrote this biography, this inside look of the Biden White House, the book coming out. And he says it wouldn't be a surprise if Biden stepped down by the end of the year. Chuck Todd asking a very specific question. And if you've been listening to me all week, including Monday, Labor Day, I've been saying that I thought that was foreshadowing. I thought that was an educated question, that Chuck Todd was asking that from a place of knowledge about what is going on in and around the White House right now. Because, boy, I'll tell you, every day there are just more and more of these headlines suggesting to me that Democrats are prepared to toss this guy out. And I'm not certain that that would be the best thing for America right now. Clearly, we need to be over with the Biden presidency. But Joe Biden as the nominee, that's a pretty good thing, actually, for whatever Republican ends up against him at this moment. That looks like Donald Trump by a wide margin. But Joe Biden, get rid of him? It could happen. There's a survey today out from CNN, Axios highlighting this poll. 2/3 of Democrat-leaning voters don't want Biden as the 2024 nominee. Is there any precedent for this? 2/3 of Democrats nationwide don't want Joe Biden, the incumbent, to be the nominee again. The party should nominate somebody else, according to a new CNN poll released today. Unfavorable opinions of Biden are rising among his own party as its voters hesitate about the 80-year-old's age and ability to handle another term in office. When Democrats and Democrat-leaning independent voters were asked who the party should nominate as its 2024 presidential candidate, only 33% chose Biden, according to the poll conducted by SSRS. 67% said they want a different candidate as the party's nominee. 67%. When those respondents were asked who the party's 2024 nominee should be, no other person polled above 3%. So that's an interesting detail. They just want anybody but Biden, but they refuse to put their name to, or at least support a specific name to replace him. That could speak to the stranglehold that the left has over its own voters. I don't want to say nobody wants Kamala, but nobody wants to say they don't want Kamala. That could be it, too. The overwhelming majority of Democrat-leaning voters who said they were against a second term for Biden, 82%, said they want, quote, just someone besides Joe Biden. Among those Democrats, half of the respondents said it was Biden's age that was their biggest concern. He's very elderly. Biden's mental competence, sharpness, senility, those are their words in the poll, health and ability to handle the job and effectiveness tied for those respondents' next biggest concern, with 7%, respectively. 56% of Democrats say they were seriously concerned that Biden's age might negatively affect his current level of physical and mental competence. That same CNN poll, by the way, showed today that Joe Biden loses to Donald Trump in the popular vote nationwide. He loses. It's not tied anymore. He's now losing to Donald Trump on the popular vote, according to the CNN survey today. And basically every other Republican as well. They all beat Joe Biden. And you have to see, what are the party elders and the Democrats doing right now? They're looking at this going, is it time? Do we hit the trap door? Is it time? Do we just eject the guy and put somebody else in there? Is it Kamala? Is it Michelle? Is it Gavin Newsom? What do we do? And never put it past these Democrats. We were talking to Ed Morrissey earlier this week, and he's saying his view is that, well, Democrats are running out of time to hold a primary. My view is they don't care. They don't care. They're going to appoint whoever they want to appoint and ram it down the throats of their voters and expect them to come out and support them in the general election. You don't need a primary process. Democrat voters, we'll tell you who you support, and then you show up in the general election. Anything can happen, but right now it seems more and more likely. Adding to the evidence that there's going to be reasons to get rid of this guy, Eric Adams. You hear Mayor Eric Adams in New York City overnight telling New Yorkers that their city is on the verge of being destroyed. He is not speaking lightly about the issue of illegal immigration anymore. Here's Adams conceding New York City is done for.
Let me tell you something, New Yorkers. Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this. I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City. We're getting 10,000 migrants a month. One time we were just getting Venezuela. Now we're getting Ecuador. Now we're getting Russian-speaking coming through Mexico. Now we're getting Western Africa. Now we're getting people from all over the globe have made their minds up that they're going to come through.
Where was this? Where was this a year ago? What is wrong with these people? He didn't see this coming? They're coming from everywhere, he says. This Jay-Z sound-alike.
The southern part of the border and coming to New York City. And everyone is saying it's New York City's problem. Every community in this city is going to be impacted.
Man, all right. So now what? Apparently he was talking to some of the wealthier people in New York City, telling them this is why. In fact, the New York Times emphasizes this today. They said, in escalation, Adams says migrant crisis will destroy New York City. Will destroy New York City. They say the mayor's comments on Wednesday were his most ominous yet, about what's going on here. And, you know, this is Adams speaking to, again, some of the wealthiest people in the area of New York and telling them what's going on here. They say the setting for the mayor's comments, the Upper West Side, a wealthy neighborhood in Manhattan, whose residents largely did not vote for him in the 2021 mayoral primary election, seemed deliberately chosen. Mr. Adams said the neighborhood was home to some of the most highly educated people in the city and asked them what they had done to help solve the migrant crisis. He says, as you ask me a question about migrants, tell me what role you played, he says, to his own people. How many of you organized to stop what they're doing to us? They must have been so stunned by this. These are all Democrats he's talking to. What do you mean, stop illegal immigration? Why would we stop illegal immigration? Here's Adams saying this is coming to your neighborhood.
How many of you were part of the movement to say, we're seeing what this mayor is trying to do, and they're destroying New York City? It's going to come to your neighborhoods. All of us are going to be impacted by this. I said it last year when we had 15,000. I'm telling you now, with 110,000. The city we knew, we're about to lose.
The city that we knew, we are about to lose, he says. Now, I should point out, and it is obviously worth contextualizing this turning of the page for Eric Adams, that he is a sanctuary city guy. He laid the groundwork for this. He made his bed, and now he's lying in it, and he hates it. He hates it. This is an October 2021 tweet from Eric Adams. He writes, quote, "We should protect our immigrants, period. Yes, New York City will remain a sanctuary city under an Adams administration." That was Eric Adams. That was Eric Adams. And Eric Adams is only the latest Democrat mayor to take that position. It was years of this from Democrat mayors, particularly when Donald Trump was in office. Here's a New York Times headline, January 2017. That would be the very first month. It's not even a full month of the Trump administration. Headline from the New York Times, sanctuary city mayors vow to defy Trump's immigration order. Vow to defy it. The mayors of American cities, large and small, reacted with outrage on Wednesday as President Trump signed an executive order saying he would halt funding to municipalities that did not cooperate with federal immigration officials. The defiant officials from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and smaller cities, including New Haven, Syracuse, and Austin, Texas, said they were prepared for a protracted fight. Quote, "We're going to defend all of our people, regardless of where they come from, regardless of their immigration status," said Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York at a news conference with other city officials. In Chicago, Mayor Rahm Emanuel declared, quote, "I want to be clear. We're going to stay a sanctuary city. There is no stranger among us, whether you're from Poland or Pakistan, whether you're from Ireland or India or Israel, and whether you're from Mexico or Moldova, where my grandfather came from, you are welcome in Chicago as you pursue the American dream." These are Democrat mayors. And so their successors were also sanctuary city people. Eric Adams, Lori Lightfoot, they were all sanctuary city people. But now, have you noticed the tone shift? They're all complaining about this. Too many illegals. It's overwhelming the city's resources. We can't take them anymore. Our city is being destroyed as we know it. Weird. How did that happen? You know, it was just a year ago, Eric Adams was asked on ABC whether or not his status as a sanctuary city contributed to all of this. Here's how he answered.
You pledged during your campaign to keep New York City a sanctuary city. Do you have any concern that policy is attracting more people to the border?
By the way, it quite obviously is. The question really should be, have you no shame?
More people to cross the border to make that dangerous trip?
No, not at all. This city has always been a sanctuary city,
Oh my God.
and we've always managed those who wanted to come to New York City to pursue the American dream.
Yeah, that's for sure. Here's AOC 4 years ago speaking to MSNBC's Rachel Maddow. AOC, a congresswoman from New York.
New York City overall is an immigrant city, and we enjoy a very large amount of economic and cultural prosperity as a result.
Yeah, okay. And what she's referencing is not immigrants who come here legally. She means illegally coming into the country is a net benefit to New York. That's funny. Sure doesn't seem like that. Here's Jerry Nadler, also a New York congressman.
After closing the book on 4 years of disastrous, cruel, and inhumane immigration policies, today we begin a new chapter.
This is March of 2021.
It is one based on compassion, on reason, and on the fundamental values we hold dear as Americans.
Just rolling over, abandoning our border, destroying sovereignty.
All of the individuals who would gain protection under the bills we're considering today, dreamers, TPS and DED recipients, and farm workers, are vital members of our communities.
All right, so, we're moving heaven and earth for foreign nationals who pour into our country. Here's Lori Lightfoot some time ago saying the Chicago Police Department is not going to cooperate with ICE. Now Chicago overwhelmed by illegals.
Chicago Police Department will not cooperate with ICE on any immigration-related business, and that's affected their ability to conduct immigration raids across the city. But that's exactly our intention.
Yeah, and then she also said that that Texas shouldn't be busing anybody to Chicago. It's not our problem.
I don't think this is what we stand for. I think it's decidedly unpatriotic and un-American I understand the pressures that the people of Texas and some of the other border states are under. We see that on a daily basis.
It's patriotic and American for Texas to have to endure the border crisis, but it's unpatriotic and un-American to send them to Chicago.
But the thing to do is not this. This is creating a human crisis and treating people without dignity, without respect. It's not what we are as Americans.
These people are cartoon characters, and in her case, she actually looks like one. Yeah, remember this from Julian Castro?
What else can we say about that except that's an individual with a deranged mind and obviously a lot of hate toward these migrants. And, you know, this is the caliber of person that's sitting in the Oval Office right now.
Yeah, Julian Castro talking about Trump wanting to stop illegals from getting into the country. Talk about deranged. And then there's this, the South Shore Chicago residents who are angry about all of these illegals pouring into their city.
All these resources that have not come to us, now you want to overly compensate for people who never lived here before, and we need to be taken care of first and foremost before anything else happens here. Right.
Why would any leader put our black communities already riddled with crime at further risk by placing unvetted non-taxpayers steps away from our seniors, our children, and our homes we've worked so hard on our own to secure?
Yeah, that's really good points. Let me bring in Dave in Alexandria, line 4. Dave, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yeah. Hi, Vince. Hey, I know that Eric Adams dislikes white people, but I didn't realize his racism extends to the people of Western Africa. I'm sure you caught in his little tirade that, they're coming in from all over the place, and among the 2 or 3 countries he mentioned, or 2 or 3 places, was Western Africa.
Yeah. Why is he so xenophobic, Dave? Why is he so bigoted? What's that about?
It's just his personality. You would not hear a Republican say, we don't want illegals coming in from all over the place. Well, they will say we don't want illegals coming in, period, but we welcome legal individuals coming into America from all over. There's no litmus test.
No, not at all. No, that's, as always, projection on the part of the left. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate the good catch there. Coming up, Jorge Ventura is going to be with us just moments away. He covers the border crisis in detail. Good afternoon. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Sean Stevens is with us from the organization FIRE. They fight on behalf of free speech nationwide. They got a new ranking of the worst universities for free speech in the country. Is your school on the list? We'll talk to Sean. Mark Green, the congressman, joins us from Tennessee at 5 o'clock. And then Roger Severino is here from the Heritage Foundation at 5:30. We're going to talk about a fresh effort by Republicans in the Senate to get rid of mask mandates forever. How did that go? We'll chat with you about that as well at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Democrats turning on the Biden administration because illegal immigrants are overwhelming the country.
How many of you were part of the movement to say, we're seeing what this mayor is trying to do, and they're destroying New York City? It's going to come to your neighborhoods. All of us are going to be impacted by this. I said it last year when we had 15,000. I'm telling you now, with 110,000, the city we knew we're about to lose.
And meanwhile, Angus King, independent senator who caucuses with the Democrats, saying on Fox News this week that the Biden administration is in way over its head.
50% of the illegal aliens in the United States came here legally on some kind of visa that they overstayed. So that's a record-keeping problem that I think the Department of Homeland Security really has to get on. That's the first step. As far as the border is concerned, the real issue is asylum. These aren't necessarily people that are sneaking across the border or swimming the river. They're people that are coming under our laws, claiming asylum from being in danger for their lives. The question is, are those valid claims, and do we have the infrastructure to determine their valid claims within a reasonable period of time, not having them in the United States waiting for a determination for years and years. I mean, that's one of the problems is we don't have the judges and the courts and the infrastructure to make these asylum decisions in a timely way. And also a question that I have been asking is, if somebody goes through 3 or 4 different countries claiming they're in danger in their home country, why do they have to come here? Why aren't they safe once they get to another country? I think that's a legitimate question that we have to address.
And there you have a United States senator who isn't getting the answers he wants from the Biden administration. Let's bring in Jorge Ventura now. He's a national correspondent for News Nation and our friend. Jorge, good to have you with us today.
Hey, Vince, thanks for having me on.
Jorge, this seems like it's reached a boiling point for Democrat officials. Has something changed?
So nothing has changed. So obviously we have New York Mayor Eric Adams begging the Biden administration just for any type of help or relief. Massachusetts governor just recently declared a national emergency. I've been speaking to some sources in Denver. Denver actually might be declaring an emergency soon with the amount of Venezuelans arriving there. And the communities that are continue to be impacted in New York are the working class communities. We've been seeing protests, where they're trying to move migrants into schools, into neighborhoods. Actually, I just did a report last month in Erie County, New York, where a couple of migrants committed sex crimes and where they were stationed in hotels were right across a residential neighborhood. And it's really reaching that boiling point. And from a political perspective, I just don't see why it doesn't make sense for Biden to at least help out his own colleagues on this issue. And right now, Vince, it's really seemed that strategy from Texas Governor Greg Abbott of sending migrants to these other cities has clearly worked. And I do remember when that busing program started, Abbott was receiving criticism from Republicans saying, hey, we're sending them deeper into our country. But I think what Abbott is doing is he has forced a national conversation. He also forces the media in New York City to have to cover this issue. And it seems whether you're on the left or right, everyone agrees this is just too much to handle.
Yes.
I believe New York right now is spending $8 million a day just in housing migrants, and that's going to reach the billions pretty soon.
Well, that money is going where Democrat mayors' mouths have been on this issue, because in New York City and Chicago and elsewhere, a lot of these mayors have said out loud, including Eric Adams when he was running for the job, that New York City is a sanctuary city, that it welcomes illegal migrants into the city and will not cooperate with federal officials looking to enforce immigration laws. I mean, isn't it the case that these lawmakers have very much set the stage for the influx they're now experiencing?
No, that's right. And I was just reading in the New York Post, there was one migrant in New York City who's been arrested 14 times, but because New York is a sanctuary city, they won't cooperate with ICE. I was actually speaking to a couple of sources in Chicago. If you walk into a Chicago police station, there's migrants scattered all over the floor. And actually, a lot of the black working class residents have been holding protests of their own, saying, why are we providing all of our taxpayer money for migrants? What are you doing for us? What are you doing for us, black Americans in the city? And, one thing the media likes to put out is they like to say the word asylum seeker, knowing that those asylum claims are not valid. 90% of the migrants that we are seeing are coming for economic reasons. So the system has essentially collapsed. Just recently, Vince, I did a story on a Haitian migrant who came in through Laredo, Texas last year illegally. He went to Ohio, and he crashed into a school bus, and it ended up killing an 11-year-old by the name of Aiden Clark. I mean, this issue has spiraled out of control. And what we are seeing now from Abbott is he's starting to send more of these buses actually to the city of Los Angeles. So now Los Angeles is going to start feeling that impact pretty soon.
So when Eric Adams gets up there and starts, spouting off about how upset he is about the circumstances, he's talking now in existential terms. He's saying that the city of New York is being destroyed. How can he ask for help from the federal government when he refuses to help the federal agency tasked with immigration enforcement?
Yeah, see, that's right. And what my sources on the ground continue to say is a lot of these migrants in New York are committing crimes inside of these hotels where they were staying, Roosevelt Hotel. Like I said, in Erie County, you had a couple of migrants committing sex crimes, but they refused to cooperate with ICE and to deport these migrants. So the Erie County officials with the New York governor were actually forced to actually call in the National Guard and to be stationed at hotels where these migrants are staying. and they're going to continue to come. And everyone is now feeling that impact. And now with the new school year started, I was actually speaking with some school officials in New York who says, we don't know what to do for this school year because we have to take in all these new migrant students, and the people that really have to pay for it are the Americans with their taxpayer money. So I've been speaking to a lot of New York folks from New York who say, hey, I've been voting Democrat or I'm Republican, but everyone is starting to see eye to eye on this issue. I think it was just a couple of days ago up in upstate New York where they bussed some migrants in, and you actually saw the residents rally and actually turn a bus around. So you're really seeing people just sick of what's going on. We're seeing New York Democrats now agree that something has to be done. And from a political, standpoint, I just don't understand why Biden is not stepping in. Like I said, even Massachusetts governor has already declared an emergency, has to send in the National Guard, and there's still more migrants on the way. And as we're seeing a new uptick in illegal crossings back again post Title 42.
Right. It is amazing. Meanwhile, there's a federal judge that according to a CBS headline, I want to understand what's really going on here because I feel like the media is not exactly telling the whole story. They say a judge has ordered Texas to remove floating border barriers, granting Biden administration request. Is that exactly right, Jorge Ventura? Because my impression was that the judge said that the barriers needed to be moved back towards the shoreline, not removed. What's the answer here?
So from the court documents that I got, the judge has ordered the state of Texas to remove those marine buoys by September 15th. We're talking about 1,000 feet buoys in Eagle Pass. And I just want to provide some context for the audience here. The reason why Texas put the buoys in that location in Eagle Pass in the Rio Grande, last year when I was reporting for the Daily Caller, it's that crossing point, it's the deadliest crossing point on the southern border. There was actually a span for about 45 to 60 days I was reporting on that they were actually averaging a drowning a day, meaning that American officials, their local county there in Eagle Pass, they would actually basically have to pull out these bodies and they would actually start burying them at the local cemetery to the point where the local cemetery ran out of room. The local sheriff there actually had to call Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and he had ordered basically these freeze trailers to start storing the bodies. So it's an area where they're seeing a lot of death. So the reason why those buoys were placed there is just to prevent any more of those drownings. I was there just recently, Vince and Eagle Pass, reporting there, and in the span of 2 days, they actually had to recover 4 bodies, including an infant. So that's the reason why Texas put him right there. And just to provide some context, we are talking about just 1,000 feet buoys, so it's less than 1% of the border even covered.
Right.
But it's a situation that Texas really is at the point where they have to use all the resources. The Texas State Troopers are really not really meant to be Border Patrol agents, but essentially that's what they are. And if it wasn't for the Texas State Troopers actually blocking migrants from crossing, we would actually see more drownings right now.
Man. Well, I want to quote something, though, for some clarification on where these buoys are going, because there's a footnote here from Judge David Allen Ezra. In the ruling, he says this, quote, "The court is directing that the buoy barrier be moved from the main waters of the Rio Grande River to the river bank rather than removal entirely from the river, so that the barrier does not impede or impair in any way navigation by airboats or other shallow draft craft along the Rio Grande River." So the judge here, I'd say, Julio is being... Jorge, my God. Your buddy Julio, sometimes that comes out. The judge here is saying move the buoys to the shoreline, but don't remove them entirely.
Yeah, and I mean, that really won't do anything. I mean, if by just having them on the riverbanks, you're not going to stop, any more drownings. So this has become a big deal over something that's, like I said, it's just 1,000 feet. Even Mexico was actually thinking about filing their own lawsuit against Texas Governor Greg Abbott. And essentially, when I'm down there in person, Texas is basically at that breaking point. They're trying to do everything they can to stop these illegal crossings. So, you have Texas State Troopers there. You have those huge barricades, a lot of concertina wire to try to stop those migrants. It's actually interesting, Vince. So when you're down there, you actually have Texas State Troopers blocking migrants from crossing illegally. So what the migrants do is they actually look for Border Patrol agents, because the Border Patrol agents actually let them in onto American soil. The huge issue with this is they're basically deterring the mission of Texas State Troopers of stopping illegal crossings. Border Patrol agents are actually allowing these illegal crossings in. Now, under the Trump administration, if you reach American soil, obviously you have to be apprehended by Border Patrol, but you would be immediately deported because of Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. Under Biden, as soon as you make it on American soil and you're apprehended, you're actually on a catch or release. And majority of migrants that I speak to are released with the NTA, notice to appear in court. The issue with that is majority of those migrants don't show up to that court case. And I've actually spoken to migrants, and I've seen this in person in documents, won't even have a court case until 2027.
So at that point, they've just been here forever. They've had a couple babies. It's like, what are we doing as a country? Finally, Jorge Ventura, as you talk to people who are illegally immigrating into our country, how confident are they that they will stay here?
Oh, I mean, they're 100% confident. The issue is because at this point now in the process is they now know a family or friend who have already crossed illegally and are in the U.S. So essentially they just follow that same system. Their thinking is, as soon as I make it to American soil, I want to approach Border Patrol, and the Border Patrol agents will release me with an NTA or notice to appear, and which they are right. I mean, that essentially is the system, and right now we're seeing those family units starting to come in again. And actually, what's interesting, Vince, because the Texas State Troopers have been successfully blocking migrants from coming, now all that traffic has moved into the Tucson sector. And the Tucson sector is more known for the gotaways. So that's where you see more of the drug smugglers, folks who do not want to be apprehended. So Border Patrol agents in Arizona say, hey, we don't even have the infrastructure to deal with this massive crowds that are now coming into the Tucson sector. So now they're being released with NTAs and are moving into the country. Majority of these migrants are still heading to New York. And like I said, they will not have a court case for, years to come.
Jorge Ventura, again, national correspondent for News Nation, just one of the best in the whole country at actually reporting on our border crisis. Jorge, as always, I'm so glad to have you as a friend and as an expert on this very important subject. Thank you, Jorge. Nice to talk to you today. Let's go to the phones. Let's take Ryan in Strasburg, line 2. Ryan, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Mr. Ventura really kind of took my thunder. I was calling in to remind everybody that these were the exact same cities that refused to cooperate with ICE a few years ago. But then also, too, it came up to another point that I thought of, that Chris Plant, again, as always, is right. It must be really, really good to be a Democrat that when you have an expense problem, you can just call your Uncle Joe, get some more money instead of cutting your expenses, and maybe start calling ICE in to get rid of your problem.
Exactly. And so when Eric Adams comes along and says, boy, Biden can really help me out, why isn't he helping me? What he's talking about is money, what you're talking about. He wants more money for New York, and rather than to actually work with the feds to eject illegal foreign nationals from the city. So how many ICE detainers have showed up at these various local prisons, jails, whatever, and they're not honored by the Democrat mayor of the city? I have to believe, and by the way, if you are an ICE agent within the sound of my voice who'd like to tell me about this, please just go to my website, get in touch with me, vincecoglianese.com. You've got a situation here where I'm sure you have good ICE agents who are just trying to enforce the law, who are being stopped on both sides by Democrat mayors and by the Democrat president of the United States.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Vince. Great show. Always listen to you every day, buddy.
Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate that. Let's see here. Let's take Mike in Middletown, line 3. Mike, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. Thanks for taking my call. Mayor Adams, who's an empty suit, he always dresses well, but he actually isn't the real mayor. Yeah. He could solve it in about 5 minutes by putting the people, very simple, put them in Park Slope, Brooklyn. That's where Chuck Schumer lives, by the way. Right outside his house would be a perfect spot. You could put them on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, Park Avenue, Fifth Avenue. I guarantee within 5 minutes, the people, the liberals in New York City, would be calling out the National Guard saying, we can't deal with this problem, like in Martha's Vineyard last year when this occurred.
Exactly right. Yeah, we have evidence for what happens when the rich people end up with illegals on their front step. They deport them right away. They round them up and they deport them. It happened on Martha's Vineyard. Only like 2 or 3 were able to slip past the deportation force at Martha's Vineyard, and they love living at Martha's Vineyard. The New York Times ended up catching up with them. They say they love it. They're so grateful they ended up on one of the wealthiest islands on the entire planet. But, Mike, you're totally right. Once the rich people are affected by this, these rich Democrats, the deportations begin. And that's why you even hear Eric Adams in that kind of soliciting their help, telling, they're coming for your neighborhood. Well, you could speed it along. Why don't you just start moving people there? See what happens. If the Upper West Side ends up with a bunch of people just living on their front porch, we might solve this crisis lickety-split. We'll see. Coming up, Sean Stevens is going to be with us from the free speech organization FIRE to talk about the worst colleges in the country when it comes to free speech.